God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with her light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the ocean, wide with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, wide with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
OMG. Not for God, but goodness. I'm emotional. Sitting over here weeping, trying to hold it all in. I hope I can get through all of this. Stan, thank you so much for having the vision to bring such a thing. My babies are here. This is such an aspect of part of my teaching them of, what makes America great. Thank you so much for your singing. I cry every time I hear it. I love this country. To the gentleman who stood up and reminded us about the Gold Star. We're here honoring so many veterans who made it home, but thank you for reminding us that some did not make it home, and that these are the stories we are to tell. So much form, so much ceremony, and that is who we are. These things, right? They're not just, let's present our colors, let's sing our national anthem, let's pledge of allegiance. These are not just things we do because we're bored or because we need, something to do in between time before the speaker comes up, but these things truly are a part of our culture. They define us as American. What does it mean to be an American if not a part of these things? Pledging our allegiance, standing and taking a moment to recognize and to appreciate those who have come before us. It is truly... And there's a narrative out there that says because I'm black, I must have great disdain for this country because I'm black. That's the narrative. That's the narrative that is pushed very, very hard and very, very strong within the black community. When you have 97% of a particular race voting Democrat, in all honesty, you're born into the Democrat Party. Not only am I born into brown skin, but I'm born into the Democrat Party. This is just who you are. It's a part of your identity. You don't even question it. And if you question it, or if you stand up and say, I don't agree with the values of the Democrat Party, not only are you rejecting the party, but you are in fact rejecting yourself. You're rejecting your race. You're rejecting your people. And there's a severe punishment that goes along with rejecting yourself. You're called a little bit of every name in the book. You lose your friends. I lost all of my friends, except for 2 during the 2016 election. I was able to maintain 2 of them. But for the most part, it's such a personal thing when you decide as a black person, for example, I'm sure for any other ethnic group as well. I mean, even the Jewish population, you vote 72% Democrat. So to stand up and say, I'm an individual, I believe in the self-determination of this nation is, it's a big deal. Now, I wasn't going to talk about any of that, but I'm so grateful. So grateful for this. Because, civics, hearing stories, these things aren't told anymore. They aren't taught anymore. Our schools are filled with which bathrooms do you want to go into? Those are the things our young people are learning. Hence, one of the very big reasons why I decided to homeschool my kids 5 years ago. But a little bit of what I want to talk about and what Stan invited me here to talk about is my second favorite topic. I mean, I love veterans, but I love talking about our Constitution. And let me just start off with something that Obama said in his farewell speech on January 10th, 2017, and I quote, "Our Constitution is a remarkable and beautiful gift, but it's really just a piece of parchment. It has no power on its own. We the people give it power. We the people give it meaning with our participation and with the choices we make, with the alliances we forge, whether or not we stand up for our freedoms, whether or not we stand up and enforce the rule of law." End quote. Now, to many, all of that sounds like very pretty words. And let me admit, Obama was the master at stringing together very pretty words. But the trick is knowing how to read in between the lines. Now, what he was doing was paraphrasing, in essence, one of our founding fathers, our fourth president, James Madison, where he wrote that our Constitution is, quote, "a mere parchment barrier," end quote. A mere paper barrier if the branches of government refuse to exercise their checks and balances on each other's power. Very different meaning. Whereas you have one who says our Constitution is nothing but a piece of paper. Really, what the intent was, our Constitution has power all by itself. We the people don't give the Constitution power. The Constitution has power all by itself, and it's incumbent upon the three branches of government to hold each other within the confines of that power. Versus what Obama and many others say is that our Constitution, our laws is really a breathing, living. How many of you guys have heard of that? That our Constitution is really a breathing, living document, that it changes as we change, right? Obama says our Constitution is just a piece of paper. And the day after January 11th, 2017, if you Google it, everyone in media was talking about it. Our Constitution is just a piece of paper, and we get to decide who we are as Americans. It's a strategy of twisting key aspects, because that's not what our founding fathers thought of our Constitution. They did not think it was just a piece of paper and we can rip it up and rewrite it as we go. Instead, they saw it has power all by itself, and our job is, or our Congress, our three branches job, is to hold each other accountable. And you and I get to hold Congress and the president accountable at the ballot box. You see how that works? But all it takes is just a twist of a phrase, right? And then we have where we find ourselves today, and that is people trying to make it up as they go. They're trying to make up the Constitution, trying to make up the laws, trying to make up the values of who we are as a nation as we go. And just in case you guys don't know, America, I was a professor, an adjunct professor of corporate finance and economics, and one of the things I made sure to tell my students, and I proved it in every single case, is that America is the greatest country that has ever existed throughout the corridors of history. But what I don't think we understand is that America is the greatest country that has ever existed because it's founded upon the greatest political document that was ever written, the U.S. Constitution. From the Declaration of Independence flows the Constitution. And it was the Constitution that gave birth to a nation. America did not make the Constitution. From the U.S. Constitution flowed America. I was telling my children this morning, before our founding fathers wrote the Constitution, there was no example they could fall back on. We were a world of tyrants, a world of monarchs, a world of communism. And just by the grace of God, the superintending providence of God, who would lead them to create the greatest political document ever written. And America is founded upon that document. America does not exist apart from the U.S. Constitution. So if you have people going in, rewriting and making it up as they go, you're essentially undoing America. There is nothing inherently amazing about any of us as a nation outside of the U.S. Constitution. It is the Constitution that separates us from every single tyrannical government that has ever existed on this planet. I hope we understand that. And I take it personal when I hear our leaders coming to the mic and saying, this isn't America. This isn't who we are. They're redefining when you hear them say that.
That's right.
When you hear them say words like that, they're redefining. It's very subtle. It's very sneaky. Like I said, Satan doesn't walk out saying, well, let me tell you what I think. Let me tell you how I feel. He takes certain aspects about who we are and he twists them just ever so suddenly, ever so slightly. And then he begins to tell it over and over and over and over. And then a new generation, a young generation who didn't know the stories, right? I grew up hearing the stories. I grew up listening to those things. So a part of that has been woven into me. But we have a new generation where you may never even hear these concepts. And if you hear it, it's from a very distorted perspective in mainstream public schools. But our founding father, I love reading the letters of John Adams, one of our founding fathers. I love reading his letters specifically to his wife, Abigail. So sweet, but he recognized she had a brain and he was relying upon her to help him flush out his ideas on things. And one of the things he said, and my children can quote it because I say it all the time, and that is, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate for the governing of any other kind of people. Meaning our constant moral, people get hung up on morals, like, oh no, I don't go to church. No, moral mean knowing the difference between right and wrong. And he said our Constitution is made only for people who know the difference between right and wrong. It is wholly inadequate to govern any other kind of people. And yet we have a culture where we don't know left from right. We don't know up from down anymore. I have to wait until you tell me if you're a boy or a girl. I mean, you look like a boy, sound like a boy, look like a duck, quack like a duck, maybe not anymore. I have to wait until you tell me who you are. But in this culture, it's going to cost you something to draw a line in the sand. Because enough of us have been quiet long enough, have stuck our head in the sand long enough, have tried to make, God is love, long enough, that now when we stand up and say, I am not confused, it does not mean I don't love you. I'm a firm believer. You like it, I love it. If you want to do it, God bless you. That's between you and your God. We're not Iran where we throw certain people over buildings because we don't agree with their lifestyle choices. We're not beasts of burdens like that, right? So if you like it, I love it, I could care less. Now I do begin to care when you begin to force it upon me and begin to make laws that impede upon my First Amendment or my ability to raise my children the way I want to raise. Now I have a problem. And I'm a firm believer that if you want to undo America, and there are people who want to undo America, where you can create morality as you go. For example, border walls are now immoral. Out of the blue. Like that just happened. I mean, are you even sovereign if you have no control over who's coming in and going out of your country? If you don't know who people are, where they're going, how they're going to protect themselves? Are you even sovereign? Can you even call yourself a nation at that point? But all of a sudden, to protect your sovereignty is now considered immoral. You see that? Every nation. I went to Israel. I spent 3 hours with the Colonel Tazar who mapped out the security fences around, the security measures around Israel. Only 5% of their security measures is a border wall. But all they talk about is the border wall, right? Only 5% of it is a border wall. I mean, are you even a nation if you have no control over who gets to come in or go out of your nation? But all of a sudden, what has been common knowledge to so many of us for years is now considered immoral. It's a redefining. If you want to undo a nation, if you want to undo America specifically, create a society where you can just make it up as you go. Now, all of a sudden, kneeling during the national anthem is a virtue. It's a righteous thing. Standing on our flag, burning our flag, it's a righteous endeavor. It's a good thing, right? Protecting our borders is evil, but standing on the flag is good, right? That's the culture in which we now find ourselves in and trying to raise up the next generation. You know, America is very personal to me. Like I said, I can't listen to our national anthem and not cry. I love it, thinking about it, getting teary-eyed, but I love it because it means so much. I remember when I was in the military and getting ready to graduate from boot camp, and the thought hit me right before graduation day, you can be sent to war. I know, I should have had that epiphany before I signed up, but better late than never. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, you're just getting into this thing because you need money for college. You're not really trying to go fight somebody's war, lose a limb, God forbid, die. And I thought to myself, well, would you go? And I said, yes, I would. But it started me on the quest of if I could potentially go and lay my life down, I need to understand. I am the kind of person who need to understand what it is I could be potentially laying my life down. And do I agree? Because growing up in the black community, you know, it's not the best rhetoric that you hear about America. And I'm thinking to myself, but I could go somewhere, potentially put my life on the line, come back not whole in some fashion, broken in some fashion. And we see how our nation treat our veterans. We were talking a few minutes ago. What was the term you gave me?
Indifference to medicine.
Yes, an indifference towards our veterans. Just a huge indifference. It's just, I mean, like, you know, it's one thing to be actively neglected, but, you know, just to be like, whatever. I mean, such disrespect. Right? At least if you're intentionally putting some thought into dismissing me, I know that I must be on your mind because you're intentionally trying to dismiss me. But if it's just like, whatever. I mean, just such a disdain. And then we had Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez say just a couple of days ago, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, referencing the veteran, the VA hospital. 22 veterans commit suicide every day. But hey, it ain't broke. Don't worry about it. It's just a gimmick. Redefining our values right in front of us of what's precious. All these songs that you just sung, all the ceremony, the pop, the circumstance, all of that. It just becomes void when there's indifference. But, you know, talking about America is like somebody talking about one of my children. It's very personal to me. It's very personal, and it needs to get personal to us. There was a time right before President Trump took office where I would hear people try to say something nice about America, and then they'd be like, oh, well, but I know. No, stop with the nice part. We don't need to apologize. There are things we've done. And there are things we've done. There are things we need to take. We need to acknowledge. We know the history of this country has not always been kind to people who look like me. And yet, I look at my country and I see she has done so much to move forward and to compensate and to recognize and to have repentance over her sins. And we're moving forward as a nation, right? But it is. I end with it is profitable for some to keep stirring the pot. Is profitable. It was extremely profitable when I started reading about different slaves' accounts and recognizing that not all overseers were white. They had black overseers too. They were called drivers. And their job was the same as the white overseer, and that was to keep black folks in line. Don't you step outside of this line. Don't you think for yourself. And that is what we have in this culture. And as a black person, a part of the black community, a lot of the destabilizing strategies that has upended a whole community is now spilling out into the larger community. And it is promising the same devastating effects. What we've seen in the black community, it is devastating our broader American community. And I'm so very grateful for opportunities like this to be able to come share about the importance of our Constitution, to come and remember those, the 1%ers of us who stand guard while the rest of you sleep at night. I'm so grateful that we have an opportunity to come and stand and to give our appreciation and to say thank you and to remember those who didn't make it back. And to continue to push forward for the next generation our culture, our American culture. Amen? Amen. Thank you, guys.